part of our three-part series on human response to the environment. This started with um, the nervous system, where we explored the central nervous system and then the peripheral nervous system, the functions, locations, and how it actually operates. The general functions and mechanism, that is reflex action, as well as the diseases associated with it. In this series, we're going to explore the human eye according to the examination guidelines and the ATP. In doing so, we have to explore methods we are going to use in our study. So in studying it, we have to know the different parts of the eye using a diagram. You have to learn how to draw the eye and how to label it independently. And you have to do all of this from memory. Then you have to also know the functions of the individual parts that you have labeled. And then you have to know the adaptations of the parts of the eye, as well as your ability to explain, because you should learn how to explain the effects of a damaged part of the eye, and then the general functions of the eye, focusing on accommodation and pupillary mechanism, as well as disorders or defects of the eye. So in doing so, we have to explore the types of stimuli that is actually recognized under this curriculum. So there are only two types of stimuli that we need to know under this topic. So one, we have light as a stimulus. A stimuli is anything that triggers a response or that will cause a person to respond. And light is one of them. Light is a stimulus and it is detected by receptors in the eye. That is the rods and the cones. Then the second type of stimulus that we need to know under this topic is sound, and sound is detected by a receptor in the ear called the organ of Corti. It is not the ear as an organ that allows you to hear, because the ear performs two functions, that is hearing and maintaining balance. But then for you to hear sound, a special part of the ear is responsible for it, and that is called the organ of Corti. So is the eye. It's not the whole eye necessarily that's allowing you to see. For you to see, there are two special receptors. One is called rod, the other one is called, one group of receptors are called rods, the other groups are called cones. They are responsible for sight, or what is called vision. So as we saw earlier on, you have to know the general structure of the eye. You should learn how to label it, and the best way to do so is by drawing it. You should be able to draw the eye. It consists of a number of circles, not a perfect circle, almost like an oval, and then you label the individual parts. So in studying the eye, we have to actually start from the back side. We have the sclera, which is the outermost layer, and the sclera continues with the cornea in the front part. And then after the cornea, we have the choroid. That is just back to the sclera again. Below the sclera, we have the choroid, which is is dark in colored part, and below the choroid, we have the retina. So necessarily, effectively, we are looking at three circles here, and they all end at the back side at a point called the blind spot, which actually exits the eye via a structure called the optic nerve. And you can see just below the retina, we have a fluid-filled area called the vitreous humor. And as we move to the front part of the eye, after the cornea, just below the cornea, we have also the aqueous humor. So there are two fluid-filled parts here, the aqueous humor and the vitreous humor. The eye is a ball, okay, it's circular in structure, but it is divided into two chambers. One chamber is on the front side, the other chamber is actually within the eye socket. And the division is actually done by the lens. We have the lens, and then we also have the lens, which is connected to the suspensory ligament, and the suspensory ligament is connected to the ciliary body or the ciliary muscle. Now, just in front of the lens is actually a circular structure called the iris. Then just at the center of the iris is a circle that keeps changing its size based on the contraction and the relaxation of the iris. And this structure is called the pupil. The opening inside or within the iris is called the pupil. Now, if we go back to the retina, there is a part of the retina called the yellow spot. So there are two spots within the eye. We have the blind spot and then we have the yellow spot. Now let us explore the main functions of the eye. So in talking about the eye, like we started earlier on, everything starts with the sclera. That is the outermost layer on the back side of it. And what is its functions? Like we did earlier on, for every part you have to know its structure, functions, adaptations, and then the consequence if it is damaged. So what is the functions of the sclera? It protects the eye against damage, against damages, and also it gives shape to the eyeball. And how is it actually designed or adapted to perform its functions? It is a tough membrane. So it is a reason it is called sclera. Now the sclera continues to the front part of the eye, and once it reaches the front part of the eye, it changes in nature. It becomes transparent. And once it becomes transparent, the name changes to cornea. So we have the cornea here, and it's a continuation of the sclera, but it is transparent. And the functions, its function is to refract light. Refraction here is bending of light. So the functions of the cornea is to refract light, or to bend light rays. How is it adapted? It is convex in shape, hence it allows refraction. And then secondly, if you want light to pass through, it has to be transparent. Therefore, the cornea is transparent and it allows light to pass through. Then we go on to a layer below the sclera, and that layer is the choroid. What are the functions of the choroid? It supplies the eye with nutrients and oxygen. And then also it prevents or reduces internal reflections of light. And then how is it designed to perform its function? It is dark colored layer and it is rich in blood vessels. So that's the second layer. Then the third layer is the retina. And what is its functions? It converts light stimuli into a nerve impulse or into nerve impulses. So how is it designed to perform its functions? It contains the light sensitive receptor cells, that is the rods, and the rods are sensitive to black and white light, that is night vision or moonlight, and then cones are sensitive to colored vision, that is daylight. It allows us to see during the day. In other words, the cones allows us to see during the day, and the rods allows us to see during the night. If you have more cones than rods, that means you'll be more active during the day than during the night. If you have more rods than cones, that means that person will be able to see clearly at night than during the day. And then we go on to D, just on the back side of the eye, we have an exit point where we have what is called the blind spot. And then just around on top of it, we have the yellow spot. So let's start with the yellow spot. What is the yellow spot? It is the area containing lots of cones. It is the area containing lots of cones. And over here, the best image is formed. Is the area where the clearest image is formed. Then just below it, we have the blind spot. What is the blind spot? It is the area where no image is formed because there are no rods and no cones there. So over here at the blind spot, there are no photoreceptors, there are no rods, there are no cones. Because of that, no light stimuli can be converted into an impulse. Hence, it is called the blind spot. So it is also called the blind spot because it is a point where the optic nerve leaves the eye at that particular area. It's the point where the optic nerve leaves the eye. Now, we have to now therefore explore the optic nerve properly. what are the functions of the optic nerve, because this nerve is actually the sensory neuron, as we have explored earlier on, that there are three neurons: sensory, interneuron, and motor. The sensory neuron is always connected to our sense organs. It functions by transmitting impulses from the retina to the cerebrum. Its function, it is its duty to transmit impulses from the retina to the cerebrum. And in looking at the function, we have to also look at the consequences if it is damaged. If the optic nerve is damaged, it won't be able to transmit impulses to the cerebrum to be interpreted. Hence, the person won't be able to see. This is total blindness. So, that is the functions of the optic nerve and the consequence if it is damaged. Now, within or below the retina is the vitreous humor. What is the functions of the vitreous humor? First of all, it is a jelly-like substance found behind the lens, and it is there to maintain the shape of the eyeball and also to refract incoming light. That is its function. Then we go on to the next structure, which is of great importance but not negligible. Remember, there are two humors here. There are two fluid-filled layers in the eye, the vitreous humor and the aqueous humor. So let's go to the aqueous humor. What is it? It is a watery fluid found in the space between the cornea and the lens. What does it do? It also maintains the shape of the eyeball, and it plays a role in refraction. So both the aqueous humor and the vitreous humor performs very similar functions. And then from there, we go to the conjunctiva. What does it do? It actually, it has a protective function. That is, it protects the eye from dust and infection causing microorganisms. It's the same as saying it protects the eye from dust and from pathogens. Pathogens are infection causing microorganisms. Then we go on to the lens. Let's go on to the lens. So we have the lens, which is an important part of the eye. It is just in front of the vitreous humor. What does it do? It changes shape for near and distant vision, or refract light to fall on the retina. So the functions of the lens is to change shape for near objects and for faraway objects, so that light from those objects will fall perfectly on the retina. And how is it designed? It is biconvex. It has two sides that are curved. Okay, they are curved inwards. Hence, we call it a biconvex shape lens. And then it is biconvex to refract light. And then, moreover, because we are dealing with light and the eyeball is designed to detect light, it is transparent. If it is not transparent, light will not be able to pass through. The person will be blind. So for the lens to support the functions of the entire eye, it is made of a transparent membrane which allows light to pass through. Now we need to explore some contextual questions here. What will be the consequence if the lens becomes more convex for a short for a distant vision? So the lens is not supposed to become more convex for objects that are far away. But then if the lens becomes more convex for objects that are far away, what will be the consequence? So this is the consequence. The clear image will not form on the yellow spot, and it will lead to loss of sight or blurred imaging formation, or image will not be seen clearly. So the person is not blind, the person is just partially blind. The person cannot see very well. Now, the lens is supported by two structures. The first one is the suspensory ligament, and then we have the ciliary muscle. So let's look at the functions of the suspensory ligament. It holds the lens in position, meaning without the suspensory ligament, the lens will not be well positioned to refract light so that the image will be produced on the yellow spot. And for the suspensory ligament to support the lens by holding it in position, it has to be made up of a special material that is the design nature, or that's the adaptation. And if you look at it, you can actually tell the suspensory ligament is elastic, meaning it can stretch and it can squeeze itself as well. Now, the suspensory ligament is not the only material supporting the lens. The suspensory ligament itself is connected to another structure, which is a muscle, and this muscle is called the ciliary muscle. It is also called the ciliary body. The functions of the ciliary body is to contract, just like any other muscle. All muscles performs these two mechanisms. They contract and they relax, or contraction and relaxation. So because the ciliary body is a muscle, it contracts and relaxes to change the shape or curvature of the lens. So that is it. If the ciliary muscle does not contract and relax, that means the suspensory ligament will not also change form to hold the lens in position. It is the behavior of the ciliary muscle and the suspensory ligament that changes the shape of the lens for near or far object. The lens itself cannot do so. This mechanism of changing shape is not controlled by the person. It is not willfully done. It is not under our consciousness. It is part of the involuntary actions of the human body. So we have covered almost the entire part of the ear, and we have actually looked at the various components and how they function. So as we move forward, let us look at this term here, binocular vision. What is the definition of binocular vision? It is the ability to maintain visual focus on an object with both eyes open. So we human beings, we have two eyes for vision, and most animals have that, and it is called binocular vision. Bi here means two. Ocular comes from the word eye. So we have two eye vision, or we have two eyes for sight. Why is that important? Because it allows a person to judge distance and depth so that we can actually create a 3D perspective of an image. This enables 3D vision. Now, there is something we left out, that is the pupil, okay, and the iris. So let's go start with the iris. What are the functions of the iris? The iris, this is the iris here. You see, that's the iris, and in between it is the pupil. So what does it do? The iris controls the amount of light entering the eye. The iris controls the amount of light entering the eye. And how does it do that? It does so by changing the size of the pupil. The pupil is the circular space, okay, within the iris. That will take us to the pupil. Is a circular space within the iris, and what does it do? It allows light to enter the eye. So let's check something here. We have to explain the consequence on sight if the pupil does not constrict in a bright light. If you are looking at the sun, the pupil, when you look at the sun directly, the pupil will have to constrict. In other words, the pupil will have to become narrow. The space within the iris will have to become very small. Why should that be the case? This is because if it does not actually become smaller, or if it does not constrict, as it is written here, too much light will enter the eye, causing discomfort or pain. This may damage the photoreceptors in the retina, and thus leading to blurred vision, or if possible, blindness. So we are going to explore this mechanism. This is what forms part of what is called pupillary mechanism. Now, the study of the eye goes with visual defects. There are certain visual defects that you need to know as you prepare for your exams. So over here, we have 4 of them. We have short-sightedness. You have to know how to define it. You have to know what it is. And then you should be able to use a diagram to demonstrate it. And then you have to know the treatment. So if you check the exams guide, you have to know the visual defect and the treatment. So over here we have short-sightedness. What is it? It is the inability of the lens to become more flat. That is because the eyeball is longer than normal. The eyeball is no longer than normal. The person can see things that are closer but cannot see far away. We say the person is short-sighted, meaning you can see only things within short distance. And this is how it looks like when images are coming from far away objects. They do not fall on the retina, they fall in front of the retina because the eyeball is too long. So how are such circumstances addressed? How do you treat short-sightedness? You use concave lens or surgery. Then we have long-sightedness, the inability of the lens to become more convex. And the reason because the eyeball is too short or shorter than normal. In other words, the person can see things that are far away, hence they can see things over a long distance, but then they can't see things that are within a short distance or things that are nearby. So here we are, the object is coming from things that are closer, or things that are closer or things that are nearby, and the image forms behind the retina. And the reason because the eyeball is too short, as you can see, it is not long enough to allow the light to fall on the retina. And how will you treat such a condition? You use convex lenses or surgery. Then we have astigmatism. What is astigmatism? Is when the curvature of the lens or the cornea becomes uneven, unequal. The surface become rough or undulated, and this will result in distorted images. And this is how it usually looks like. And how is such condition treated? It is treated using what is called a bifocal lenses or surgery. Lastly, the last visual defect is cataract. What is it? It is when the lens becomes cloudy and opaque. Okay, like you can see it on your screen, that is the lens, and it looks cloudy or is colored now, becoming opaque. How do you treat it? Using a surgery to replace lens with synthetic lens. So you need to master this information. This is something you can do. You have the ability and the quality to memorize the entire information on this particular presentation for examination purposes. So we've already looked at the functions and adaptations of the eye, and we have to know that to explain the consequence of a damaged part, all you need to know are the functions of that part, and then you insert the words will not be able to. That's the phrase to put in. Once you put in the phrase, you have explained the consequence. And then you qualify it by saying the person may not be able to see, or it might lead to blindness because the eye is meant for sight. And if the eye cannot allow the person to see, we say the person is blind. And then you need to know across the many parts that we have learned, the adaptation of some of them, if not all of them. And that is what we just did in our earlier study. Then we went on to look at binocular vision. And by definition, binocular vision is a vision using two eyes. Take note, the word vision here means sight. And so binocular vision is a vision using two eyes with overlapping fields of view. And it is such that separate images are combined and interpreted as one image by the brain. If you see such a picture and then you are made to identify the mechanism happening here or what type of vision is this, you have to know this is what's called binocular vision. The word bi here means two, and the word ocular here it means eyes. So vision also means to view or to see, that is sight. So this is an object. This is the human head, that's the cerebrum. And then we have two eyes. Okay, one eye can see one side of an object, and this eye too can see another side of the object. And what the brain will do is that it will combine the images captured by both eyes into one visual image so that we can have a perception of depth. This takes us to the importance of binocular vision. It allows the brain to create 3D images of our environment. It also allows us to perceive depth and distance in relationship to an object or between objects. Now we need to also know how the eye is designed for it functions, because the eye is designed to detect stimuli. The eye is a receptor and it is adapted or designed to detect stimuli. So if you want to really detect stimuli, what kind of organ will you actually design? If you want to design something to detect light, what will be the properties of that object? So one, we have to know the object or the substance you want to detect. Over here, the stimulus that is actually being investigated is light. That is a stimulus the eye can detect. So if you want the eye to detect stimulus, we have to know what light is all about. Hence, let us look at some of the properties of light. Now, light cannot pass through an opaque object. So what is an opaque object? An opaque object is any material, whether solid, liquid, or gas, that will not allow light to pass through. So if you want to design a material or an object that can see light, you have to make sure that that object you are going to use to detect light isn't opaque. Secondly, light can visibly pass through transparent materials. Okay, so a transparent material is any material that allows light to pass through. The front part of the lens is transparent. So that is how our eyes are actually designed. The front part is transparent like a glass window, and the aim is to allow light to pass through. And then this is actually done so that light can make vision possible, because without light, vision cannot be possible. Vision means sight. If there's no light, everything becomes dark. And when everything becomes dark, it is equally by saying you are looking at an opaque environment, an environment that light cannot pass through because there is no light. If there's no light, you won't be able to make sense out of your environment. Then we go on to the disorders of the eye. So in looking at the disorders of the eye, if you look carefully, that is the lens, and that is an object nearby. So over here, light coming from the object will pass through the cornea and then will be refracted and it will enter into the lens. That is the lens. It is the lens. And then the lens will also bend the light, so it bends the light coming from the object. But wait a minute, the light coming from the object was very bright. This looks like a shadow, and then again we get another shadow. So what is happening? Something wrong is happening here. That is the yellow spot where the clearest image is supposed to have formed. But then what happened? Yes, here, this is what happened. No image is formed here. And the reason is what? We need to find out what the main reason is. You can see the object is actually far away. It is more than 6 meters away. And thus, no image was still formed. So we decided to make some changes. Is it because the person cannot see? Is it because no image is formed since the object was actually more than 6 meters away? So some adjustments were made so that the object will come nearer. And when the object came nearer, guess what? Same thing happened. Now check the behavior of the lens. The lens became even more convex. But then, yet still, nothing was seen. Okay, the person still couldn't see, even though we changed the position of the object, and it was detected that what is happening. Why can't the person see? It's because the person has cataract. Okay, and what is cataract? Cataract is the cloudy or milky appearance. It's when the lens becomes a cloudy or the milky appearance of the lens, or when the lens becomes cloudy or milky in appearance. And this makes it opaque. Remember, an opaque object will not allow light to pass through. That is why, even though the eyeball is perfect in shape and the lens is actually changing shape all right, yet no image is forming because the lens is opaque, and an opaque object will not allow light to pass through. So because there is no light passing through, no image will form, hence the person is declared blind. All right, so how do you correct this condition? You have to just change the lens using surgery. Through surgery, a new lens can be actually implanted there. You have to remove this lens and then replace it with a synthetic lens. Then let us do some diagnosis of the human eye. In as much as we are studying it, we have to know due to our genetic differences, our eyeball size are not the same. Some people are born with this kind of eyeball. Okay, if you take 1,000 people and then you analyze the shape and the size of their eyeball, you will notice some differences. Some will have a perfectly round eyeball, and guess what we have here? There are those who are born with this type of eyeball, and then guess what again? We have also this type of eyeball. So you can actually notice they all have it, and you may think they are all seeing the same way. You know, if you put an object in front of them, you may think they are all seeing equally, only to realize later on that things are not the same. So here are three different individuals, and we are subjecting them to a simple experiment, whether they have the same vision or sight. So to do so, we have to take a relative measurement of their eyeball size by taking a normal person's eyeball, somebody with a perfect vision, and we take just any random individuals, and then we take a measurement of their eyeball. By checking their measurement, okay, this person's eyeball is declared normal, but then you realize that if you look at the relative diameter of the eyeball of the normal person, it is actually smaller than the second person, and it is actually way bigger than the third person here. So how do we know wrong from right? You can only know wrong from right by comparing two or more things. So here, this person's eyeball is perfectly circle, okay? Hence, we declare him or her as a person with a normal eyeball size. Now, this person's eyeball, we won't say it is abnormal. We only say the eyeball is too long. He or she didn't make the eyeball long. The person was born with the eyeball just naturally being too long. What about the third person's eyeball? It is too short, and we know about these differences due to our ability to compare. If you don't compare, you won't know the differences. All right, so which of these three can be declared to be a disorder? Is this person's eyeball a disorder? Is that person's eyeball a disorder? And is that person's eyeball a disorder? And which one among them will be declared blind? Or are they all going to see the same way? To answer those questions, we have to continue with this experiment. And this is what we're going to do. So there is another thing you need to pay attention to. If you look at their lenses, you can see they all have perfect lenses. Their lenses are all in perfect condition. The only problem is the differences in their eyeball size. But that is not a problem. For as long as it doesn't affect them, it is none of our business to declare it as a problem. So we're going to test their vision. We want all these three individuals to actually see or look at an object. Okay, we're going to put an object in front of all of them, and the distance between them and the object will be the same for all of them. The size of the object will also be the same. Conditions will be the same. The reason why conditions and the distance and the objects have to be the same is to ensure the validity of the experiment. We're using three individuals with the aim of making the experiment reliable. We could have done better by using about 10 people or 100 people. So we place an object here for the person with the normal eyeball size. The same object size from the same distance for all the three. Now, the distance was the same for all of them. This is a far object because the distance from them and the object is more than 6 meters, which is specified. So we can actually take the measurement and then we actually predetermine it. So the distance from all of them to the object remain the same. The object size also remain the same. So this is what happened. The moment the light from the person fell on the lens, they were refracted, and then perfectly so, the light fell on the retina. And then, yes, over there on the yellow spot, a clear image of the object was formed perfectly on the retina. That means the person could see. So this person's sight, the person with the normal eyeball size, is perfect in vision. The vision of this person is excellent. Okay, now let us test the person with a longer eyeball. This person's eyeball is too long. Will he be able to see an object of the same size from the same distance as the person with the normal eyeball? So this person was able to see this object from the same distance. The size of the object is the same. Will this person be able to see the same object from the same distance? Let's find out. So yes, the experiment was done. And guess what? Okay, all right. So you see here, from that distance, the light will fall on the retina here if the eyeball is of this size. But then, because this person's eyeball is too long, guess where the light fell? So the lens refracted the light and fell here, trying to match up with the diameter of the normal eyeball. So what will be the consequence here? The person could see. The person wasn't blind. The person could see, but then what you saw was very blurred. The person is like looking through a thick glass. So you can see that there's something there, but you can't make sense out of what you are seeing. So the reason is because the eyeball is too long, okay, and the image falls in front of the retina. Why is the image falling here? You can actually tell you the image is supposed to fall here, but it fell here. And check the shape of the lens. They are just the same shape. And the reason is because the eyeball is too long. All right, so this person is going to experience a blurred vision. Now let's check the last person's vision. Under the same condition, the same circumstance, the same object, the same distance, will his shorter eyeball be a disadvantage or will it be an advantage for him? So let's see here. For this person with the eyeball being too long, this person cannot see faraway objects. Okay, so the person cannot see. Before we look at what can be done, let us explore the eyeball, the vision side, the vision quality of the person with the shorter eyeball. So yes, the same situation, the same condition, and luckily for him, yes, he was able to see. So clear image formed perfectly on the eyeball. That means even with his short eyeball, he's able to see far away objects. He's able to see things that are far away or things that are over long distance object clearly, perfectly. Even though his eyeball is too short or shorter than the one with the normal eyeball, both could see perfectly. So what we think to be a disadvantage was actually an advantage for him. So this person's eyesight is perfect for seeing things that are far away. And a simple reason because the eyeball is too short and a clear image formed on the retina. But then there's something wrong. So how will you describe the vision quality of this person? We will declare this person, yes, long-sighted. Why is this person long-sighted? This person is long-sighted because the person can see far away objects or objects that are over a long distance, or he can see things that are far, far, far away. So to say, long distance means long-sighted, like you can see things that are far away. That is so to speak. However, these two can see, the one with the shorter eyeball and the one with the normal eyeball, but this person cannot see clearly, not blind, but can see but not clearly. So must we let the person remain like that without being able to see? No, something can be done. So what can be done is that we need to change the direction of the light coming from the object. If we can change it a bit, the lens will be able to adjust itself to focus it on the retina. And to do so, we have to use a biconcave lens. So by giving the person a biconcave glasses or lens to wear, now something different occurs. So yes, the direction of the light coming from the object is now diverged, okay? It is pushed back a bit so that the lens can reposition them and refract them onto the lens. So with this now, the person can also see clearly like the other two guys. So we did not change the shape of the eyeball. We only changed the speed and the refraction nature of the light. We only change the distance by using the lens to push the light coming from the object backward a bit so that the person can actually see clearly. All right, so another thing was done because in the first experiment, the individuals were allowed to see things that are far away. Now we brought the image closer to see what could be the change. So by bringing the object nearer, that is in less than 6 meters, for the person with a normal eyeball, yes, the person was able to see, nothing happened. There was no disadvantage to the person. Now, what about the person with the eyeball too short? If you bring an image closer, will he see or will he still not be able to see clearly? So when we bring the object closer to the person with the eyeball being too long, it seems that it becomes an advantage for him. Okay, so this person is able to see clearly. Before then, this person could not see far away objects. But then there is a change. This person cannot see things that are far away. However, when you bring the object closer to him, he or she is able to see. In other words, this person can only see short distance objects clearly without any further assistance. This person is therefore declared short-sighted. The person is short-sighted because the person can only see objects that are within a short distance. Now we need to experiment on the person with a short eyeball. If we bring the object closer, will he still be able to see, or will he be able to, or he won't be able to see? What's going to happen? So, because we know earlier on the person could see far away objects, even though his eyeball appeared very short. So now that the objects are much more closer, what will be the consequence? Will it be an advantage or a disadvantage? So we just have to experiment it to see what will happen. So by bringing the object closer, well, unfortunately, you can see the image formed behind the eyeball, and yeah, we know the eyeball is too short. Okay, so the object actually wouldn't form well. So unfortunately, a blurred image is formed behind the retina. And what could be the possible reason? The possible reason is because the eyeball is too short. So bringing an object closer will become a disadvantage. But then if you push this object far away, you can see that this image will form on the retina. As the object goes further away, the light rays will converge further away. It won't go behind the retina. It will come forward a bit and it will form a retina and the person can see. Therefore, for the person with the eyeball being normal, there is no problem with object being far away or being closer. The person can still see because the eyeball is perfect. But then with a person with an eyeball too long, that person can only see when the objects are actually placed within a short distance, because the light on the image of the person will fall on the retina due to the eyeball being short. But then for the person with a short eyeball, when you bring the image closer, the light falls behind. But then when you take the object further away, the light also moved further because the light moves with the object. If the object moves away, the light also moves away. If the object moves forward, this light also keep on moving. Same applies to this person. If you take the object further away, the light will also move. The light will also meet at this point. You see, this is a meeting point. The light also meets because this light is coming from the object, and the light moves as the object moves. If you bring the object closer, the light will actually meet behind the eye, the retina. Hence, the person will be blind. So, by moving the object closer to the eyeball, the light met behind the eyeball, the person became blind. So, this person can see perfectly. The person with the normal eyeball, the person with the eyeball being too long can see perfectly, but this person cannot see. The image is blurred. That is, bringing an object closer to him becomes a disadvantage. For example, reading a book or watching a movie can be a disadvantage for him or her. So what can be done for such a person? This person cannot see near objects. So how will you solve the problem? you must give this person a biconvex lens, and this lens will actually sort of bend the image, bend the light coming from the image heavily so that it can actually fall on the retina to produce a clear image. So both of them, all of the other three can now see because we helped to correct the visual disorder of the person with the eyeball too short. People with a shorter eyeball can see far away objects, but they cannot see objects that are nearer. And the big reason because the eyeball is too short. How do you correct such a condition? They must be given a convex lens. So that is a beautiful illustration. Let's look at another condition here. So this is a person with a perfect eyeball. You can actually tell perfect shape. And this is actually the outer part. That's the sclera. Remember, the sclera continues with the cornea. But then check, you can see here, the circle is perfectly equal, perfectly even. But then getting to the transparent part, which will allow the person to see, something begins to happen. Instead of the cornea being smoothly circular, you can see they became very rough. They are transparent. They're supposed to bend light. But then the lens remains perfect, perfectly circular. Okay, it is actually biconvex. So what to be the visual nature? What to be the visual circumstance of a person with a cornea of this nature? So over here, we have to place an object in front of the person and then allow the person to see so that we can evaluate his sight. And once the light falls on the cornea, something begins to happen. You can see several of the light begins to get refracted in various directions. And instead of the person seeing just one object, what is going to happen is that the person will now start seeing a blurred image. Why is the person seeing a blurred image? The person is seeing a blurred image simply because multiple images are formed in front of the retina, not perfectly, and is due to multiple refraction of lights, and it is as a result of multiple curvature. So where the word multiple means many. So we have this curvature, we have this curvature, we have that curvature, we have so many curvature, and each curvature is bending the light independently, producing multiple focal points, and these focal points will end up producing multiple images due to multiple refraction. And a person with this condition uh, is actually diagnosed with astigmatism. And the reason is because the cornea has an uneven or an unequal curvature. So if a person is born with this condition, the person won't see better, won't see properly. The person is going to struggle to view, to read, and to see stuff. So how will you handle such a condition? This defect can be corrected through surgery. So a surgery will solve the condition. Now let's look at, let's put all that we know together in understanding the structure, functions, and the adaptations of the eye. So remember, the eye is designed to see light, that is daylight and night light. So this is daylight, bright light. If you place an object there, and that is the eye, you can see something here. You see here, the circle is supposed to go all out, but it didn't, because if it goes all out, light rays will not be enter. That is the lens. Okay, so during daylight, okay, during the day, what happens? The pupil constrict. What is the pupil? The pupil is a space within the retina, between the iris. Sorry, the pupil is the space or the opening within the iris. So that's why we see an opening here. This opening represents the pupil, and then the pupil is actually within the iris. So what goes on during the day? During the day, the pupil constricts so that less light will enter the eye. And this is to prevent the photoreceptors in the retina from getting damaged. So this is during the day, and you can see the light is actually entering it. And then once it enters it, the image is formed on the yellow spot. So that's the yellow spot. And then perfectly so for a healthy person, a clear image is formed on the retina. But then let's see what happens during the night. Okay, now the sun is no more there in the sky. The sun has just set, and now it is evening time. At night, dim light is actually the condition the eye will be exposed to. That is dim light or dark, in a dark place or whatever. Where if we are if actually in the night you are in a dark place within a dark environment, what will be the condition? So when you are in a dark place, I want you to watch this carefully. That's the pupil, because the pupil changes in size with respect to the amount of light. So see what will happen when it is dark. Well, the moment it is dark, the moment the sun sets and everywhere becomes black or dim, or when you are in a cave, if you enter a cave suddenly, see what happens to the pupil. The pupil opens. Why did the pupil open? The pupil dilated or it widened. That is dilation here. It widened because remember you are in a dim light or you're in a dark place. Hence, it dilates to allow more light to enter the eye so that you'll be able to see. That is to make vision possible. So, when we were in a bright place, the people constrict. The opposite of dilate is constrict. But when you're in a dark place, the people dilate, and it dilates to allow more light to enter the eye, so that a clear image is formed. So this mechanism we just saw, whereby the pupil was changing size, okay, when you are in a dim place or when you are in a bright light, is what is called pupillary mechanism. So the eye functions under these two mechanisms. We have accommodation for near and far objects, and then we also have pupillary mechanism. And these mechanisms are processes you have to describe by writing the steps under each circumstance, whether you are looking at a near object or far object, or whether you are in a bright light or dim light. You have to know accommodation deals with distance, pupillary mechanism deals with light intensity, brightness of the eye. So let's start with accommodation. Before we go, you have to know the meaning of accommodation. What is accommodation? It is the ability of the eye to alter the shape of the lens to ensure that a clear image always falls on the retina, whether the object is near or far. Another word for far is distance. So you can actually tell this is an illustration of accommodation. The emphasis is actually on the lens. So check the lens here. You can see the lens keep changing shape as the ball start moving towards it. As the ball moves away, the lens becomes thinner. But then as the object comes closer to the lens becomes thicker. it becomes more convex. So the lens changes shape to produce a clear image. That is the main purpose. That is the main idea behind pupillary mechanism. So if you look at it here, that's the main idea behind accommodation. So over here we have accommodation of the eye, okay, based on the distance. So we have the yellow spot, and then we have a clear image, and then this object is just about 6 meters away, beyond 6 meters away, and once you place it within that distance, a clear image is formed. Now, what will happen if we change the distance? If we bring the object closer, will the person still be able to see? Now, you can see here, the object is closer by looking at the fact that the light is coming from one spot. Okay, earlier on, the light was coming parallel. Once you see the light coming from one spot, we know the object is actually within 6 meters or within less than 6 meters away. And what happened? Check the shape of the lens. This is the previous shape of the lens. Now that the object is closer, if you look carefully, you see the lens becomes more bulkier. It becomes more curved. And this is what accommodation is all about. The emphasis is mostly on the lens. There are other parts connected to it because the lens cannot change shape by itself. The changing of the shape of the lens depends on other structures connected to it. Accommodation strictly deals with distance. Anytime you're meant to describe how a person sees an object which is far or near, the word far or near correlates with the word distance. Whenever you are dealing with distance, the only way the eye will make sense of what it is seeing, it is through accommodation. And like I said earlier on, the lens itself, though it is a main structure involved in accommodation, it cannot change shape by itself. Whether it will change shape or not, it depends on the following structures. So here is a clearer depiction of the mechanism of accommodation. Over here we have near vision. That is when you're looking at things that are closer, and when you're looking at distance vision, that is things that are far away. Now look at the lens again. If you compare, you can see there is a change in appearance with regards to the vision you are looking at. If the vision is near, the lens becomes more convex. If the vision is far away, that is a distance object, the lens becomes very thin, that it becomes less convex. But then the lens is actually being held in position by two structures. The lens is directly in contact with the suspensory ligament. And over here, if you're looking at distance object, for the lens to become less convex, the suspensory ligament, it becomes stout because the suspensory ligament is not made of muscle. So the suspensory ligament becomes stout. But then if you're looking at a near vision, for the lens to become more convex, you can see here again, the lens is directly in contact with the suspensory ligament. And hence, for the lens to become more convex, the suspensory ligament will have to become slackened. So that's the word to use. There's no other word to use. For examination's sake, we have to use the word taut for distance and slacken for near. If you are actually finding it difficult to remember these words, take note. The word taut and the word distance, we have T in them. So the suspensory ligament becomes stout for distant object. And here the suspensory ligament becomes slackened for near vision. But watch again. The suspensory ligament together with the lens, they are both held in position by the ciliary muscles. There's a muscle here. And muscles actually does two things. They either contract or relax. So for a near vision, the ciliary muscle contracts, and for a distant vision, the ciliary muscle relaxes. Once these changes occurs within these parts or these main parts of the eye, now the person will be able to see clearly, whether near vision or distant vision. There are other details when it comes to accommodation of near object. Near object refers to objects that are less than 6 meters away. Distant object refers to objects that are more than 6 meters away. Everything under near vision is directly opposite to the events taking place under distant vision. The structures remain the same. ciliary muscle is here, ciliary muscle is here. Suspensory ligament is here, same thing is here. Lens is here, lens is here. So what happens? What are the differences between the two? Under near vision, the same ciliary muscle here contracts, but then under distant vision, same ciliary muscle, it relaxes because the opposite of contract is relax. And then under near vision, suspensory ligament, it loosens or it becomes slackened. But then the same suspensory ligament, it becomes tightened or it becomes stout, it tightens up. These are ways that are acceptable, the only ways acceptable to use in exams. And then what happens to the tension on the lens? The tension on the lens becomes less or it decreases. And here, if it doesn't decrease, the tension on the lens will increase. Over here, the lens becomes more convex. The lens still remains convex, but here the lens becomes bulky, and then here the lens becomes flatter. And then this causes light rays to bend more. Light rays will keep on bending under each circumstance, but here the light rays will bend more, and over here light rays will bend less. And then what do we have? A clear image is formed on the is focused on the retina, and the same thing applies here. A clear image is focused on the retina. So there are some few things that when you pay attention to, you will get marks, like the last point and the last point. But you have to take note that whatever will happen here depends on what will happen here. If the ciliary muscle does not contract for a near vision, then the suspensory ligament will not be loosened or it will not be slackened. If the suspensory ligament does not become slackened, then the tension on the lens will not decrease, it will increase. And then if the tension on the lens does not decrease, then the lens will not become more convex. If it does not become more convex under near vision, that means it will become less convex. That means light rays will not bend more or it will bend less. And if all these things does not occur, still under near vision, the person will not be able to see because a clear image will not be focused on the retina. In other words, the person cannot see. So this is just a reverse of what will happen still under near vision. So, well, the ciliary muscle is supposed to have contracted, but it did not contract. But then the person is still looking at objects that are closer. That means the person will not be able to see clearly. Now, how do you explain such a situation where you are looking at an object in a near vision and the ciliary muscle is not contracting? You have to write the same thing, but you must write the opposite of all the statement. How do you write the opposite of all the statement? You simply insert the word will not. So if the ciliary muscle does not contract, then suspensory ligament will not become slackened. And then the tension on the lens will not decrease. And then the lens will not become more convex. And this will cause the light not to bend more, and hence the person or a clear image will not be formed. This is a high order type of question that demands critical thinking and explanation. So if you really want to be able to describe accommodation, master one side, know it very well, and then if the question is about near vision, then you write it. But if the question is about distant vision, write the opposite. This is also another way of demonstrating accommodation of the eye. So you have to look at the lens and then look at how it behaves during a near vision and a far vision. Check the ciliary muscle as well, since it's supposed to contract and relax. Now we go on to pupillary mechanism. So if you look at the eye, you can see here there is a hole. This hole is called the pupil. It is a circular space within the iris. So this is the iris. If you examine the iris carefully, you can see there are these structures. They look like threads. They are not threads. They are muscles. There are two types of muscle here. You can see some muscles are actually moving in this direction. They are going in this direction. Those are what is called the radial muscle. And then there are other muscles going all the way around it. These muscles are called circular muscles. So what is pupillary mechanism? It is a process by which the diameter of the pupil is changed to control the amount of light entering the eye. And this is how you detect pupillary mechanism in exams. You'll be given two eyes, and then one will appear this way and the other one appear this way. Over here, the pupil looks large, and here the pupil looks small. This is the size of the pupil when you are in a dark place, and this is the size of the pupil when you are in a bright place. Now, these mechanisms are not something you control. These things are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. They are part of the involuntary actions of the human body. So we need to know the intensity of light. When it comes to pupillar mechanism, we have to understand that the intensity of light is the stimulus that changes the size of the pupil. You don't decide to change it. The pupil size will change based on the intensity. The intensity here deals with the brightness of the light. Whether you are in a dim light or you are in a not so dim light, or if you're in a bright light or not so bright light, then it will cause the pupil to change size. But then the pupil is a space, it's an opening within the iris. You have to know the iris controls the amount of light entering the pupil. The pupil is like a window or a doorway into the inner part of the eye. And it is circular, okay? The iris is circular, and it consists of circular and radial muscles. And they behave antagonistically, they work against each other to change the size of the pupil. So let's look at this contextual question. Explain the consequences of excessive exposure of bright light. If you expose your eye to excessive amount of bright light, what will happen? So check it out. Because the iris controls the amount of light entering the pupil, if too much light enters the eye, photoreceptors in the retina will be damaged, and this will lead to blindness. So that is the reason why there is always a change. That's why the people on the eye, that's why the people will have to change size, and then the size change is actually controlled by the iris. Then we go on to pupillar mechanism itself. Let us explore pupillar mechanism in a dim light. There are only two conditions: dim light conditions and bright light. So when you are explaining it, you have to focus on three things. One, the muscles involved. There are two of them. You have radial muscles, circular muscles, and the pupil itself. So what happens when you're in a dim light? When you're in a dim light, less light becomes available. Hence, the radial muscles cause iris to contract, and then the circular muscles of the iris, what that means, it relaxes. These two muscles, they are antagonistic. When one contracts, the other relaxes. If this one contracts, this one will relax, and when that happens, the pupil widens so that more light can enter the eye, so that vision will be made possible. In a bright light, the opposite occurs. The sclera is the white part of the eye. Because bright light actually can be harmful to the eye, the radial muscles relaxes, and then when the radial muscles relaxes, circular muscles of the iris, it is going to contract. It contracts, and then what happens? The pupil constricts. The pupil becomes smaller so that less light will enter the eye to prevent any damages to the photoreceptor. So there you have it here. Everything under bright light condition is opposite to the dim light conditions. Certain structures remain the same. We have radial muscles here. It relaxes. Circular muscles contract. Remember, they are antagonistic to each other. The pupil constrict under bright light. It gets smaller. The amount of light entering the eye is reduced to prevent blindness due to damages to the photoreceptors. Similar thing applies to dim light as the eye responds to the condition. Radial muscles contract, circular muscles relax, pupil widens, gets bigger, the amount of light entering is increased so that the person can see. So under each condition, under each situation, the person will still be able to see. But then for you to memorize it, you have to master one side, know it very well, and write the opposite if in exams the question rather falls under them. If you have mastered bright light and the question is about bright light, then you simply have to write it. But then guess what? Certain structures remain the same. We have radial muscle here, we have radial muscles here. But then whereas these radial muscles relax, here it contracts. But that's not how you compare it. You compare radial muscle with circular muscles. Both of them are muscles. When one relaxes, the other one will contract. So if you compare, you can tell certain structures that are involved in pupillar mechanism, there are only three: radial muscle, circular muscles, and the pupil. And then that is how you get it done. So that is the natural appearance of the eye. And with regards to the pupil, when you're in a bright light, it becomes smaller to control the amount of light entering so that less light will enter. This is how you see it from the side view. And then this is how you see it. This is what I showed you earlier on. The pupil, the gas becomes larger, it widens, it dilates because you are in a dim light or a dark place like in a cave, or you are watching a movie and the light goes off. Once it happens, the pupil gets larger to allow more light to enter so that you can see. If you walk in from a bright light into a cave, same thing will happen. When you're in a bright light, your pupil will look like this. The moment you enter a cave, your pupil gets larger for a good reason, because inside the cave, the environment is dark and you have to be able to see. Sight is impossible. Sight is very possible because it is part of human response to the environment. And the purpose of responding to the environment is to ensure your survival. Hence, you have to be able to see. Your people have to widen to allow more light to enter so that you can see your environment, so that you can also protect yourself if there is any danger. So the reason why your people keeps on dilating or constricting is to, one, control the amount of light entering so that it won't damage the photoreceptors, and then also to protect the individual, to bring protection and survival. Now, there are two mechanisms we have explored so far. You will have to be able to detect each conditions under each scenario, whether it is pupillar mechanism or accommodation. In many cases in exams, you will simply be told describe accommodation or describe pupillar mechanism. That becomes much easier. But then there are other situations where the question is formatted into a story form. The story is structured like a scenario. So let's look at some of them here. So if you look at this first scenario, we have a beachgoer observing a boat disappearing over the horizon. You are supposed to describe how the eye is able to see under this condition. But then you have to indicate whether this situation is accommodation or pupillar mechanism. By looking at the beachgoer observing a boat disappear over a horizon, here we are talking about an object moving away. Once the object moves away from you, you are dealing with distance. Once you are dealing with distance, it falls under accommodation of the eye, specifically of a far object. So the object is moving afar, because accommodation deals with near and far. So identifying the mechanism correctly is one thing. Knowing which specific condition you are dealing with is also another thing. What about observing sunset over the horizon? Is it accommodation or is it pupillar mechanism? If it is accommodation, what kind of accommodation is it? Is it near or far? If it is pupillar mechanism, what condition are we dealing with? Is it in a dim light or in a bright light? Guess what? You're observing the sun setting. The sun gives us light. Once the sun sets, it gets darker. So here we're not talking about distance, we're talking about brightness of light. Hence, it's accommodation. But because the sun is setting and the environment is going to become darker, this becomes pupillar mechanism in a dim light. Okay, so observing the sunset is pupillar mechanism. What about observing a rocket lift off into space? When you are observing a rocket shot up into space, you are looking at an object, and the object is moving further and further away from you. As the object moves further away from you, you are actually observing distance, and the eye is measuring the distance of the object in relation to your position. So that is not pupillar mechanism. This time you're looking at accommodation. But what kind of accommodation are we looking at? Because the object is moving away from you, we are therefore looking at accommodation of a faraway object. What about when you descend into a shaft? Okay, you are in a shaft and you descend into a deep mine pit. So before you went into the shaft, definitely the environment will be bright. But once you enter the shaft and you go down, because there's no light down there, the whole place becomes darker. Hence, you're going to need traditional light, or light down there inside the mine shaft won't be that bright. So here we're not talking about distance, we're talking about pupillar mechanism in a dim light. What about if you are reading a newspaper? Because you have to bring the paper closer to your face. We are dealing with distance here, the distance from the paper to your face. That means we are looking at accommodation. But what kind of accommodation? Is it near or far? That is accommodation of near objects. If you are chatting on your smartphone with your friends at night, when you are chatting with your friend at night, remember when it's night, the light won't be that bright. But then your phone light is so bright and it will cause your pupil to either dilate or constrict. So depending on the brightness of your phone, if your phone light is too bright, that means your pupil will have to constrict. But most smartphones have bright light. So this is going to be pupillar mechanism in a bright light. What about observing distance field? You climb a mountain, you climb to the top of a mountain to observe distant mountains. And since we're dealing with distance, that is accommodation of faraway objects. What about you walking into a classroom during the day? As you walk into the classroom from outside, it's very bright with sunlight. As you enter the classroom, because of the less amount of light in the classroom, the room becomes darker for you for a bit. So here, you're not dealing with distance. You are dealing with intensity, brightness of light. That is pupillar mechanism in dim light, because the classroom will be dimmer than the outside. What about solar eclipse by the sun by the moon? So you're observing this, you're observing the sunlight, enjoying it, and then suddenly the moon eclipses it. It becomes eclipsed by the moon. What happens? The bright environment turns dark, and that is pupillar mechanism in a dim light. What about if the light goes off and after some hours it's on again? Because once the light goes off during load shedding, the whole place becomes dark. You're going to experience pupillar mechanism in the dim light. But then once the light returns back and the lights are on, the power of the lights returns back, you'll be experiencing pupillar mechanism in a bright light. And then observing an airplane land from the sky, that is, the airplane is coming towards you. This one deals with distance, is accommodation of the eye of a near object. What about observing sunrise? So before the sun rose, it was dark. That is pupillar mechanism in a dim light. Once the sun rises, it becomes illuminated, it becomes bright. So that is pupillar mechanism in a bright light. Now, in conclusion, we will look at the nature and treatment of the following eye defects using diagrams. And we talked about short-sightedness. The person cannot see nearby objects or the object within a short distance, but cannot see. The person can see objects within a short distance, but cannot see long-distance objects. And we have to be able to observe the nature of the defect, okay? And over here, the nature of the defect. When looking at distant object, the light rays focus in front of the retina, causing blurred vision like we saw earlier on. The defects may be caused by an eyeball being too long or the cornea being too curved for the length of the eyeball. The inability of the lens to become less convex. How do you treat it? You must wear a concave lens. So that is what we saw earlier on in the presentation. This is actually the defect, and then this is how it is corrected using a concave lens, as the image can now fall on the retina. We have the same for long-sightedness. We have already observed it. You can also review it by reading through your note, refer to your note to understand fully what's happening, why a person can see far away but cannot see near objects. And the fact that the light focuses behind the retina if you bring an object closer to the individual. And the reason because the eyeball is too short or too rounded, the cornea is not curved enough for the length of the eyeball, the inability of the lens to become more convex. You need a convex lens for such a condition. So here, what we have is that the eyeball is too short. The person can see far away, but when you bring the object closer, the person cannot see. So how do you correct the condition? you need a convex lens so that it will bring the image that fell behind the retina forward. And that is it. And only the convex lens can do that. And then we have astigmatism, where the cornea of the lens becomes unequally round in all direction. Light entering the eye is not focused well, and it will lead to blurred vision, headaches, squinting of the eyes. And how do you correct it? Using laser therapy or using contact lenses, which is prescribed. So that is it here. You can see the cornea is actually not uniform. This is for a near vision, but for a astigmatic person, the cornea is actually not uniform as compared to this one. How do you know this one is actually perfect and this one is not imperfect? It's by comparing. So a special laser light can be used for such correction of condition. What about cataract? Cataract refers to a condition where the clear transparent lens becomes cloudy and it prevents light from entering the eye, and this results in blurred vision. Cataract develops slowly and increases in size over time. And how do you treat it? By using prescribed spectacles, and then surgery can be actually be required, and a synthetic lens can be inserted and be used to replace the normal lens. All right, so for a cataract person, this is a normal person with a transparent lens. This is a person with a cloudy lens. So using a surgery, it can be corrected. For this person, there is no focal area, and the image becomes very blurry. So that is a basic presentation on the parts of the human eye. Thank you very much for joining me. Make sure you study and you listen and read the notes along with and solve some questions, practice everything where necessary, practice how to draw, how to label, how to describe the processes, and also the diseases. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.